Well, good evening, sports fans, and welcome to a Monday night edition of the Hager-Hershey-Zelt High School Wrestling Weekly, hosted once again by our wonderful host, the Double Eagle Clubhouse Grill. Tonight's special is the turkey melt wrap. That's your favorite, Dane, but tonight they put it in a wrap, so you swayed away from that, just went some tots. I went with my all-time standby, the Cuban and tots, and it was so full that I didn't even get to the sandwich part, just ate the leftovers, and the sandwich is going to lunch with me for tomorrow.
Well, we had such a busy weekend of wrestling, we don't have time to eat during the show, and it's an even busier week this week with multiple broadcasts, a couple of doubleheaders, and, of course, Saturday's a big day as we kind of feels like you wrap up the first portion of the season in that Saturday before the vote, right? And then we'll have the vote on Sunday. That'll be a really special show. Already had coaches reaching out to me. What time's the show? How are we going to listen to it? We want to host our party. And it's always kind of nerve-wracking to talk to those coaches because I think they're insinuating that they're going to get in. And I remind them, first off, I only have one vote on the committee, and two, there's a lot of wrestling yet to be had. Now, we gained a lot from some of the conference duels and certainly from the trade-off this weekend. That settled a lot of things as far as who's going to get in and who's no longer really lobbying for one of those spots. But there's still a lot of duels out there, and I had a lot of coaches reach out yesterday saying, hey, don't forget we wrestled them on this day, because that's gonna be our moment to prove ourselves.
Well, I was on the chat board listening to the Gorillas talk last week and on Gorilla Radio, and I thought this week was the reveal show, and I said, well, tune in and listen to the reel, and Mikey says, that's pretty good, Rex. He said, that's 4 days before we vote. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so we'll remind everybody who's in the tournament again for Team State on the second Saturday in January, along with reminding everybody who is kind of in consideration and what those rankings look like. We have not revealed a new set of rankings for this week, as I think we may end up just holding off until next week because there was so much information to be processed that by the time I think we do compile it all, there'll be Tuesday duels and Wednesday duels. So I think we're going to lump it all in together into one last set of rankings, and then we'll see who gets those final spots. Now, last year, of course, we had the big controversy of taking 3A from 8 teams to 12 teams, if you remember. Yep. Let them in was the chant. I've already had a couple coaches say, well, why don't we just expand 4A into an additional number of spots? So there's one coach out there listening right now who sent that message who might be chuckling to himself. But, it's the great thing about it. If it wouldn't be nearly as fun of a tournament if you didn't have coaches who wanted to bend the rules and change the rules to get in. And I think for 4A specifically, we all know who's going to be in the semifinals. Yeah. I mean, well, 3 of the 4 teams at least. Well, there's just nobody. There's nobody within reason that's going to challenge those 3. And we saw that on Wednesday night when Brownsburg took on Avon. I mean, Avon took their best shot at them, and they weren't even close. And Avon was ranked number 4. Now, they did get beat by Mater Dei, so I think those two will swap, and they'll be 4th and 5th. But those 3 teams are way above everybody else in 4A. But the other teams in 4A would love to wrestle the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th best teams in a round robin to get that experience.
Well, do you start stealing teams from 3A that want to go to 4A?
Well, there certainly have been teams who have chosen to go up, so don't forget that Mater Dei is not a 4A school by size, and neither is Cathedral. There's nobody else knocking at the door to come up and wrestle against those 3. But that's part of the reason why we expanded into 4 classes and split 4A and 3A, was because we knew that 3A was going to be so ultra-competitive, and that's proven to be true every single year. So we'll talk about some of those teams and who had a great weekend and who maybe lost some ground over the weekend. But what we really should do is talk about the NE8 duels and the ACAC duels. Holy cow. Where there's some competitive dual meets and some great atmospheres. And for Adams Central and South Adams, really feels like the season got underway. And for Bellmont, they're already deep into their season. You and I talked a little bit off air before. New Haven just that good, but Bellmont didn't wrestle poorly. And I wrote that in my article that goes up tonight I don't think it's necessarily that Bellmont walked out of the gym feeling disappointed that they lost to New Haven. I think it confirmed what a lot of people feared 2 or 3 weeks ago when they really started to see what New Haven was doing, and then they started to look at the Bellmont lineup, and they thought, man, this is going to be a tough duel for us.
There were not good matchups.
No, and then there were. We talked about this too. Belmont's got some guys who, in some matches, they're getting pinned, but in other matches where Belmont's really competitive, they're getting the pins. And I feel like Bellmont lost almost all of those in the duel on Saturday. Guys like Ryan Fawbush has been great this year, but he gave up the fall. I'm trying to think of who else in that lineup that gave up. Will Franzi got pinned against New Haven. Bellmont lost 8 of the 14 bouts, so you go 8-6. That's you're one match away from 7-7, but they gave up 47 points in those 8 bouts, right? So that's seven falls and a tech fall, and that's just how strong New Haven is.
I'm working Friday night last week. I get Saturday off. I stay home, and what am I doing when I'm home? I'm listening to you call wrestling on the radio. And it just proved to me that Adams Central team didn't miss much of a beat by being off for football, because I thought from what I listened to your broadcast, it sounded like Adams Central, they weren't wrestling maybe the same competition that the NE8, a little bit less for the ACAC, but still, I thought the Jets sounded to me on the air as they wrestled really well.
Yeah, and I think they still have some moves as far as where their lineup's going to go. Now, are they going to be able to be competitive with the very best teams in 1A? I'm not sure. I had them ranked preseason as number 1. Now, of course, we lost Max Carr and Smith and Everett and a couple guys that we thought were going to come back, but the lineup overall looks really, really solid. I think Tony still has a hole or two where he thought he was going to have a guy go down, and then they didn't. And then I noticed, I left after the third round on Saturday, and
after Purdue basketball started.
Yeah, I drove up to Columbia City to catch the Bellmont New Haven match, so I didn't get to see Adams Central at the end. I did notice that Jackson Bingham wasn't in the lineup in the last 2 rounds, and so I really hope for Adams Central's sake that he's not hurt. I haven't talked to anybody, so I'm not sure what that was. But Bingham's a kid. Everybody talks about him being a first-year wrestler last year. He was green and he was all this. And I'll have to give Denny a hard time because I was listening to their broadcast of that AC South Adams match, and he made some comment about South Adams being favored in that match against Bingham. And I thought, man, I think he's really underestimating Bingham. And sure enough, it was Bingham who beat, I think it was Eli Loshi in that match. South Adams actually, even though they were down a guy from who they had earlier in the week, and that may really hurt them in the long run, but specifically this weekend, it didn't hurt them at all. They were right there with Adams Central. They were right there with Jay County. And, Josh Gaskell was telling me earlier in the week that he really thought that South Adams had a chance to win that weekend. And he wasn't far off. They were right there. So that's going to be an extremely competitive ACAC tournament here in January when it gets to Adams Central.
With that, we've proceeded our way through the weigh-in segment and made our way to the first period. So let's send it back to the studio to Steve Rouse, run the board for us for a round of commercials. Back with first period A right after this on Hager Hershey Zelt High School Wrestling Weekly.
When faced with the difficult task of making arrangements for your loved one, many emotions and questions arise. What would they want me to do if they were here? Where is the money coming from? How much should I spend? Do they want burial or cremation? The staff at Haggard, Hershey, and Zelt Funeral Home can help you navigate these tough questions. Make your wishes known and allow us to make sure that your wishes are carried out. Call Ryan Hershey or Eric Zelt at 260-724-7167 to schedule an appointment today.
Based out of the Indiana Tech Wrestling Facility, the Warrior Regional Training Center is an elite training center for youth wrestlers, high school wrestlers, and college and senior level athletes. Featuring a college coaching staff with a strong history of developing talent and producing results, Warrior RTC will give any wrestler quality training partners to push them to new levels in the state-of-the-art 25,000 square foot wrestling building. The training is affordable and private training is also available. Put Warrior RTC in your corner this season.
Hosted by the Double Eagle Clubhouse Grill, Rex Brewer and Dane Fuelling, and we are working our way into first period A. And let's see. I wondered why you didn't send me the pre-schedule of what was going on today. And I got here and saw some old guys here, and I figured it out pretty quick. But you're the slide dog, aren't you? No.
Well, with Thursday's festivities coming up, and we want to encourage everybody, if you're listening to our show, unless you're heading up to Columbia City to watch Adams Central, I'll give you a free pass. Everybody else should be at Bellmont on Thursday watching Bellmont and South Adams. Not only is it going to be a great celebration of Bellmont wrestling history, Adams County wrestling history, but honestly, it will be a really good duel with some really good head-to-head matchups. Now, there'll be a couple of first-period falls mixed in there, but you've got some really good matchups between South Adams' best and Bellmont's best. And now that we've had the AC duels, now that Bellmont's wrestled Norwell, AC's wrestled Norwell, that sectional seeding really has kind of taken place now, and we're able to really look at who's going to be where. Now, will Bellmont get a chance to wrestle Jay County? I don't know. Jay County, with their showing this weekend, they're right now maybe on the outside looking in, and it's kind of a weird spot that they're in, being the host but not necessarily being there. But there's still 4 spots in 2A, so still a lot of things to determine, and I know they still wrestle some this week.
Coach Myers hasn't cut that check yet to you? The bribe check?
He has not. The bribes only come in the form of T-shirts. So, Speaking of checks.
Speaking of checks.
That's good. You got a transaction here we got to complete?
I do. Somebody's trying to pay the bills.
That goes straight to the boss.
To the new boss.
We, talking about coverage, maybe we should discuss very briefly that on Thursday you had a great match between Jay County and New Haven, and we haven't been able to line up, I guess, as many good dual meets on the girls' side of things that we wanted to this year, but we have everything set in motion for the girls' state tournament in January with coverage of sectional, 2 regionals, 2 different regionals, and the state finals. That's going to be a fun month of January.
Well, I think that some of the girls' teams are not solid as dual meet teams, but there are some great individuals that are going to make that tournament series phenomenal. And I think, New Haven is overloaded with Ocampos, and people are dodging them. So a lot of times, I know that Isabella is undefeated. She's 22-0. She won a big tournament over the weekend, but I've had her 2 different nights where people dodged her and didn't wrestle her.
Don't get a wrestler.
Yeah, and they just don't want to get spanked. And, she's got some wins that I'll get for forfeits when I think they should have wrestled people. But I know that Heaven Gardner went heads up against Mallory Winter, come after her. And, she does not have the technical skills to hang with Mallory, and she stayed away enough that Mallory gets a 1-0 win.
But what a great opportunity for her to wrestle Mallory this early in the season relative to the girls.
Well, I think they're 1 and 2. I think they're ranked 1 and 2.
Yes, they are. And to have a chance to go back and work with that New Haven coaching staff, and for them to look at the film and say, okay, this is the 3-time defending state champion. This is number 1. This is the one girl that we need to figure out how to beat, and we're going to spend a month working on how are we going to attack her if we get to see her again. And now the bigger thing is that we've split. They're not going to see each other before the state finals and are potentially going to meet, in the finals. And what we saw from Heaven last year, you would surely think that she's going to be right there, at least in the semis.
She was trailing 1-0 going to the 3rd period, and it's her choice. All she has to do is take down and get the escape. She's athletic enough to get the escape, and she takes neutral and didn't do anything just like she didn't do in the first 2 periods. And I thought, why didn't she go down? And I realized that Mallory Winter is a pinning machine, and she would have cranked her and pinned her. And that's why New Haven was smart enough. The coaching staff says, maybe get lucky and get to take down your feet, but you don't want to go underneath her.
Yeah, so it was an entertaining broadcast, and we certainly thank all of our sponsors who've jumped on board to make sure that we're able to bring you those sectional and regional coverage. And then, of course, that 3rd Saturday? No, 3rd Friday it is.
We go every Friday there for like a month.
The 3rd Friday in January when we have the state finals down at the state fairgrounds. And if you are interested in more information, that is on the IHSAA website as far as the timeline and who's going to be where. What else do you want to talk about? The NE8, or you want to start with the ACAC?
Well, NE8, I watched a couple of matches up there. Thank you to the staff and the people up at Columbia City that put us in good position and give us a hard line, because that gym is really hard to broadcast from. Got a couple of pretty good matches in that night. Bellmont wrestled Leo first and then wrestled DeKalb, and it was a little bit late of a night because Leo showed up late and weighed in about 45 minutes late. But
it was a common theme because I believe there was a team that was late Saturday morning at Adams Central. Yeah,
but I think the matches that I saw were pretty good. It went quickly. Thanks to Joe Caprino, the number one gorilla. He was there broadcasting with me and did a great job of play-by-play and color, and we had a good night.
Yeah, and Joe's going to be doing the match on Thursday night for Adams Central at Columbia City. So if you're an Adams Central fan and you're interested in that one, make sure that you tune in. That one will be on YouTube. Now, we're working on getting Joe set up on the WZBD YouTube side, but he already does stuff on YouTube with his own stuff. So we may end up sending that link out and just avoiding getting Joe set up. But I do once again want to point out that we have some great Adams Central sponsors, and that is the only reason why we are going to such great lengths on Thursday when we already have Bellmont and South Adams wrestling each other here in town, to make sure that match does get on is because of those sponsors. So,
and that's the beauty of having the extra channel.
Exactly. So now don't forget, tomorrow night it's Rex and Dane together at a wrestling match. It doesn't happen very often anymore.
Not very often.
But we'll have it 2 times this week. We'll have Tuesday tomorrow night. That's a 6 o'clock start at Adams Central for the JV as New Haven travels to Monroe. And then on Thursday, Adams Central will be at Columbia City and South Adams will be at Bellmont. I think it should be a great opportunity for fans to listen to that AC broadcast. That match should go really, really quick. And the way it sounds, Tim's got all kinds of things planned for Ricky Bobby Night, as you've been calling it. And then that will last, I think, a lot later into the night. So you should be able to catch a lot of both. And then on Saturday, we're still working through these schedules, and maybe you might be interested, if you're listening, as to who is wrestling whom. I did talk to Coach Curry and to Coach Miller. Now, Adams Central is going to be at their classic Yorktown/New Haven Super 10, and I'm not thrilled about these pools because I think Adams Central could have been put in a lot better pool, but we won't complain to the Yorktown athletic department. That's gotten us in trouble before.
You've just gotten back in the door. You don't want to get banned again.
Adams Central is going to take on Marion in round 1 in Pool B, and then they'll wrestle after that Lakeland. We saw Lakeland up at Goshen, and then round 3 they'll have off. Round 4, Adams Central will wrestle New Haven, and that's the reason why I don't like it, because Adams Central wrestles New Haven on Tuesday, and then they come right back and they have to wrestle them again on Saturday. I don't know why they can't be put in separate pools, considering there's 10 teams there. There's no reason for them to have to wrestle each other again, but whatever. And then Adams Central will take on South Bend Washington, and South Bend Washington's been a really weak team the last couple of years without a whole lot of action. So we're still trying to work out what that's going to look like. We are potentially exploring the idea of going down in Newcastle for some early round coverage and then stopping at Yorktown on the way home and bringing you both, which would make sense. Now, Adams Central will have a 6th round, which is the crossover. Now, if you assume that New Haven's going to get the better of Adams Central, because right now I think New Haven is probably a top 20 team regardless of class, and Adams Central's not up at that level.
Well, they've got 2 people ranked at number 1 in their weight class.
Exactly.
That helps.
And so that means Adams Central's probably going to get 2nd place. Now, over in the other pool, you got Yorktown, Center Grove's B team, Prairie Heights, Mechaniqua, and Whitco. Those could be really good duels. That will easily, I think, be Adams Central's most competitive duel of the day, is that approximately 3:15 match. Now, South Adams is down at Newcastle. They've got some interesting matchups. They'll wrestle Western Boone in round 1, and then they'll take on the Fighting Bradleys of Muncie Central, who, by the way, I don't know if a lot of people have taken note of this, but Cole Mendez is helping out. He's on the coaching staff at Muncie Central. AJ has not delivered. AJ Bradley hasn't delivered my finder's fee for setting up that assistant coach's job yet. But in round 3, then, South Adams will wrestle Newcastle. Don't forget, this is at Newcastle, the largest high school gymnasium on the planet. And then South Adams will wrestle Centerville in round 4, and they'll take on Rossville in round 5. And I think the most intriguing match of the day is that Rossville match, because Rossville is not yet in for 1A yet. But when it comes to the rankings, they're ranked number 3 ahead of Adams Central. So there's an opportunity for South Adams to say, we want to see their lineup. We got all day to look at them, and we're going to take our best shot at them. And if they can get a win over a Rossville team, that could really make a big difference in seeding for 1A Team State.
And they look at who's going to draw the short straw and draw Noah Weaver.
Yeah. Well, what weight is he?
90, 215.
So right now, South Adams forfeiting those weights. So, and I think that's one reason why South Adams probably licking their chops, because let's be honest, if you got 2 forfeits in your lineup, what you want is for those forfeits to line up with the other team's 2 best guys, right? So that you can't bump them around. We saw that with New Haven on Saturday. Bellmont was worried about where they were going to put Easton Doster. Sam Wolpert, I think, was a little bit hurt, and they ended up walking Sam out on the mat, injury defaulting without ever wrestling, and that neutralized Doster to the point where they knew that where he was going to be, and then they were able to go at 57 and then with Gavin at 65, and they got a win from Landon Rich at 75, but they just didn't have enough when it came down to the rest of the day. So Bellmont does come through. They beat the other 6 teams in the conference. They looked pretty good. East Noble, I think, talking to Coach Reason, felt like he didn't put out his best lineup because it was the very end of 7 duels in essentially less than 24 hours. But could that be a more competitive individual tournament? Gosh, I don't think so, because I think New Haven is probably an even better individual tournament team than they are a dual meet team.
Yep.
But I'm not going to say that Bellmont doesn't have a chance to win that conference tournament, because you do have those other teams. The teams that aren't relevant this past weekend can become relevant because they've got a few decent guys who make some noise. Now, on the ACAC side of things, absolutely, that's going to be one of the most competitive conference tournaments that we've had, at least since it went back to Fridays. What you looking at over there?
I'm just looking at rankings. They have Noah Weaver ranked number 1 at 215.
Yeah, and so that completely neutralizes him against South Adams, because South Adams is going to be forfeiting 215 and 285 all season long. So that he goes away when that comes in.
When the rankings came out and Mikey had Giuliano ranked number 1 at 106, I think, was she the highest placer coming back? And I looked, and all the 6-pounders that qualified last year have moved on up. She's a senior in the top 10. They're all freshmen and sophomores.
Yeah, but it's
There's
a really talented freshman class of some guys who are really going to be something moving forward. So I know those of you who are listening that watched the Brownsburg and Avon duel, that was so much fun. One thing that I really appreciated about Brownsburg, Rex, they brought those boys, the Brownsburg home wrestlers, came from the upper deck down the stairs as part of their introductions. I thought that was kind of cool. Of course, you couldn't do that at Bellmont or Adams Central or South Adams, but it was still kind of a neat thing. It kind of brought them through the crowd more than bringing them from out behind the bleachers or through the doors.
Interesting.
Now, we also want to talk about, in the next segment, like I said, who is requesting consideration and who is under consideration. And one of the big tournaments this past weekend was the Trakoff, and the results out of there were quite eye-opening, to say the least. There were some teams who I think people thought, they're probably pretty good, and now they're saying, okay, this team's good enough to potentially win a state title. So we'll talk about that here in the next segment when we specifically when we talk about 2A and 3A.
That wraps up first period A. Let's take a round of messages, send it back to the studio for Steve Rouse to get us caught up on commercials, and back with first period B right after this on WZBD.
Hello, this is Joel from your local hometown Packaged Liquors. Packaged Liquors provides the best selection of domestic, import, and craft beers in Z-Land. With locations in Decatur, Monroe, Bern, and Markle, you're always just a short drive away from picking up the perfect last-minute gift or just the right six-pack to watch the game with friends. You're never a stranger when you walk through the doors. and our smiling staff never has a problem giving you a recommendation when you're not sure what it is you need. Stop in at one of our 4 locations and see what hometown service looks like. Package Liquors, it's where your friends shop.
Weigand Construction in Fort Wayne is committed to providing quality, value-based construction services, and that commitment begins with our employees. We strive to anticipate and exceed clients' expectations, honor our commitments, and provide for the communities in which we live. If this sounds like the place where you'd like to work, visit our website at Weigand Construction to see our open positions and fill out an application. We want you on our team. Weigand Construction. Trust, well built.
For the Hager Hershey Zelt High School Wrestling Weekly, hosted by them each week. Dane, it's weird on Monday night here. I walked in, I was like, man, it's not Sunday night. I'm used to
It does have a little bit different feeling now. My son was very concerned that I wasn't going to make it back in time for the Bears game. I told him the Bears will be just fine without me. There's plenty of football to be seen when we
The result of that game has nothing to do with you or your son. I can guarantee you that.
His grandpa is one that believes that if you walk away from the TV, the Bears
It's
will
your
play.
fault.
The Bears will play worse. So
Well, a big Bears fan was sitting on that corner over there for a long time, and then the show started. He walked out.
he did not want to be put on the mic.
He did not be that. My one of my workout partners, Jeff Franzi, my junior year, Froggy was my partner. He and I were teammates. He went down to state finals with me in '78. He was ended up getting beaten in the semis and did not make it to the finals. But he was my workout partner. He was a 112-pounder that year. And one of my other workout partners, the next year, teammate of mine, is in the house tonight.
Yeah, and we'll talk to him here coming up in the third period. I'm excited about that. Certainly excited about what Tim has planned for the Bellmont match on Thursday. Hoping that everybody who's listening can make it to Bellmont. And, of course, if you can't, tune in to WZBD as we'll have full coverage of the match. And if you're a super fan, show up to the match, go back and listen to it. Check out the highlights. Go on WZBD.com and follow us all season long. I know Dave Nathan and I were already working out the details. He was asking, what are we going to be doing for the Al Smith? I said, absolutely, we're going to be at the Al Smith. We're going to be at Mishawaka. If you're a Bellmont wrestling fan and you're working those days, the 27th and the 28th, don't worry. You'll know who seated where. You'll know who survived the first day, who made it to the blood round. You'll be able to listen to the placement round matches, and all of that is because of our awesome sponsors and everybody that steps up to support WZBD, and we've got more sponsors than ever this year.
I do know Tim was worried about crowd size because South Adams is not putting a full team out there, and I said, well, I know 10 people from my family are going to be there, and some of them have never seen a wrestling match, and some of them has been a lifetime ago since they've seen a wrestling match. So
now I know that South Adams, despite the fact that they do have those 2 forfeits, they seem to have a good crowd at their home match. They had a good crowd at Cowan, and they brought a decent amount of people Saturday. So I would expect the South Adams faithful to show up like normal. So
I've been pushing on my buddy Grant Mosier. I said, hey, you need to come out and I've seen enough of your games. You need to come out and see one of mine. And I said, besides that, it's South Adams and all those football players play for you. And he said that's something he was going to put on his calendar, so I might shame him into it.
Okay, let's give a special High School Wrestling Weekly shout-out to the Lowell Red Devils.
Okay.
They went 5-0, won the 16-team Trakoff Memorial Tournament. They knocked off number 5, Portage. They beat Franklin, who was ranked number 12. They beat Hobart, who were ranked in 3A in the top 5. And they finished 5-0. And I think more than anything, everybody kind of has them as the very first team in the new 3A and potentially this year's state champions in 3A. So you think about Lowell and you think about all the great names, Marcus Shantube and all of these guys. But
Luke Honing.
Luke Honing's not a Lowell grad?
He coached at Lowell. That was his first coaching job. Yeah, coached basketball there.
I did not know that. I knew he was a Lafayette Jeff guy.
When you're in a car with Lou for like 7 hours in 2 weeks going to football games long distance, you learn a lot.
You learn a lot of things. Now, on 3A, we want to remind you that the teams that are in are Columbus East, Floyd Central, Hobart, New Haven, Martinsville, New Pal, Roncalli, and Terre Haute South. Lowell absolutely is in. I don't think there's anything that could happen. I don't know who they have left on their schedule, but those wins against a team like Portage and winning a tournament against Franklin, Hobart, Mishawaka, some teams that are in consideration or are already going, puts them in. Now, who else is going to fill those spots? I don't know. East Noble, I'm not sure, really made their case this weekend. They lost to Bellmont. Fort Wayne Snyder is advocating that they belong in. They beat Bellmont, so they certainly have a leg up on East Noble. I think the big test for Snyder comes this weekend, as I believe they are at the Henry Wilk, and we know our good friend Henry is always listening. Very cool that he has his own tournament named after him. If I take a quick look at who is going to be at Penn, that is December 21st. Oh, Snyder wrestles New Haven Thursday night.
That'd be a real test.
And, that's a great thing about this tournament is you got 8 teams who have nothing to lose because they're already in, right? And then you got everybody who's trying to schedule them. And New Haven knows it's okay. If we lose to Snyder, no big deal. But Snyder knows that it's everything.
Yep.
A win over New Haven on Thursday would do a lot for them. Going to Penn this weekend are Snyder, Columbus North, Penn, New Pal, Mishawaka. There's an opportunity there. If the general's listening, and I know he is, if these Snyder boys deserve to be in, they're going to be able to have their chance to prove it. So we look forward to seeing those results. And, of course, we'll go through all of those and talk about the impact that they had. For Snyder, they haven't really gotten their season started because of the way their football program usually goes. So we'll see that match on Thursday at New Haven. Sounds like a great match. I know we're trying to get everybody to come to Bellmont on Thursday, but I'm sure Fort Wayne-related people are going to be interested in how that one goes. And then we'll see Snyder at the Al Smith as well.
Listen, you're talking about those reveal parties. You got people calling in wanting to know what time it is. Do you have something set up for our Facebook's page so you can put the list of all everybody that's texted in? You could just track them all. And we could do some.
We need to
count some numbers.
Get people to send their team picture like they do for the IHSAA to our Twitter feed. That would be fun. Now, finishing in second place, I believe, was Portage. Their only loss was to Lowell. And then I don't have it in front of me as to who won the tiebreakers for third and fourth, but I do want to point out that New Prairie had a very impressive weekend. It's not very often that you take a team and you say, well, how'd they do this weekend? Well, they went 2-3. Well, 2-3 was an awfully good performance because of the score margins that they had with the other teams that they had. So listen to these New Prairie scores. New Prairie was a 44-32 loser against number 5 Portage. They lost to Lowell 38-37. So they took the champions to within 1 point, and then they lost to Franklin, the number 3 team in 3A, 35-33, and they beat Fishers 49-27. So some really good scores there from New Prairie. Oh, sorry, that was the Lowell score. Now, where was the other New Prairie score? I was scrolling through here. Joe did a nice job of getting them all. Oh, sorry. Scratch the last score I give you. New Prairie beat Hobart 39-34. So that's another team that is already in for Team State in 3A. And I know a lot of people maybe don't look at it as in-depth as I do. In fact, I know that, but
duh.
When you're in 1A and you beat a team who's in 2A, that's something. And I don't care who they are or where they, what their record has been so far. If you can beat a team who's already in one class up, then you're automatically in one of those top spots for consideration when you start looking at it. That's an easy way for you. So if you're a coach out there and you're looking at building your schedule for next year or considering it, you really need to look at it from that standpoint. Don't just think about the teams that are in your class. Look at the team in the class above you that's close by and say, hey, we want to wrestle you. And for the teams that are already in, that's always going to be a good match. Even if you're just wrestling a 1A Team State team and you're a 2A team, that's something to look for when you create your schedule over the summer next year.
And I know that the good thing for having Joe on the show with me the other night is that sitting next to me, he said, there's a feature I added the other day. You can go on and click on a team, and if there's like an upcoming dual meet, you click on that team, and then there's possible matchups that are in there, and it kind of does comparison so you can look and say, does a little match preview to know who's going to wrestle who, and it has a lot of information there. And he's pulling all this out of databases that, he's the keyboard wizard and can make all that stuff happen, but it's just another feature that he's added to the Indiana Mat.
Yeah, he's really excited about that. You can go to rankings and then dual comparison. And he's been running a couple different ones, and you can add them as you go. And so, I'm clicking on here. You can click on the Brownsburg and Avon comparison, and it will put the two schools side by side, tell you where they are, and then it'll put who does Indiana Mat have as their current 106-pounder? Who does Indiana Mat have as the 120-pounder? And as long as those are updated and people put those in, you can really take a look at, when Ryu wrestles Landon Haynes. Ryu ranked number 1 in the state. Haynes ranked number 11. Well, what did they do? They had two common opponents. What did they do against each other? Then you can also look, like if this comes back and they wrestle each other again in the semifinals at Team State, what did they do the first time? Haynes Ryu tech-falled Haynes 19-4. And, from a coaching standpoint, from a broadcaster standpoint, from a fan standpoint, that is so nice to be able to not have to go out and find that comparison, but to be able to do it right there on your computer. Now, the one thing that I will say for anybody who's listening who's on a coaching staff is there are going to be some teams who don't get the seed that they want because they're not posting their stuff on Indiana Mat. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're thinking, my team, they're being considered, I'm sure they're going to get in, you better make sure that you have all of your scores posted. And, we'll call out Fort Wayne Snyder right now because they wrestled this weekend at Northridge, and they've only posted one dual result out of the 5 matches that they wrestled. Those of us on the committee who are thinking about what we're going to be doing on Sunday, how are we supposed to know who Snyder wrestled if there's only one result posted? Your win over Warsaw isn't enough. We want to know who else was there. If I click on the schedule for who was there, it says Fort Wayne Snyder, Homestead, LaVille, Northridge, Northwood, Warsaw. Well, I know Homestead, they're trying to get in 4A. They've got an A and a B team because they got a big room and they got a lot of guys. Coach Oberlin's doing a nice job. And that's the beauty of wrestling and coaching a program like that. He got invited to 2 different varsity events this weekend. He had his choice. Could I go to Delta? Could I go to Northridge? He decided, what would be a really nice feather in my cap if I were to take down the defending 2A state champions, because I think that's a better win than beating Northridge or Northwood or maybe even Snyder. And you know what they did? They went down there and they beat Delta.
Did they?
And that Homestead team is really coming on. And whether or not they get in, I don't know. I think they are one of the top 10 4A teams right now, but there's only 8 spots. So
that's quite the feather in your cap. You take off the defending 2A champion.
Yeah, so Homestead with that opening season loss to New Haven, I'm sure that Coach Oberlin feels like he could narrow that gap from 48-26 to something different right now. But that New Haven team is just solid from top to bottom, from the little guys that they have down there and Juliana all the way up to McGrant. McGrant is not going to get pinned or lose to anybody who's bad. He is only going to lose to guys who have a 75 or 80% or better win percentage. And everybody in between is so solid. So looking at Homestead this weekend, they had a big win over Carroll 2 weeks ago. Carroll had a nice tournament 2 weeks ago, and so that goes well for them. Homestead's big thing right now is a nice win over Westfield, and they beat Fishers 48-24 last week, and then they come through and they beat Delta on Saturday 38-33 is how that one went.
Hey, I don't know if the two gorillas realize, but our show got moved from Sunday to Monday. they're trying to compete with us. They're going to have a Gorilla Radio tonight, but they usually go late because Mikey's in Central Time, so they're usually on to like 11 o'clock at night.
He always uses that time zone thing as a crutch, I think. I'll give him a hard time.
As I'm winding my night down and I'm sitting there about ready to crash out, and all of a sudden I get this notification, hey, Gorilla Radio's on. I was like, I clicked on it.
You're going to be up for another 45 minutes at
2
least.
hours. So,
well, it's great stuff, and we certainly appreciate our partnership with Indiana Matt and with Joe and with Mike and with everybody else. If you are going to a match, you've got to spend 15 minutes. Go on and look at the team that you're going to watch. See what those guys are ranked. See why they're ranked that. There's so much more out there when you're watching a match to know the context of who's coming up and what those matchups are going to be. It makes it all the more fun, and it certainly adds to our broadcast whenever we have them.
With that, let's send it back to studio to Steve Rouse running the board for us around the commercials. Come back with our next segment, which is probably going to be second period A right after this on WZBD.
Renowned around the Midwest for his skills and his creative abilities, Nate Bowers and the team at Bowers Paint Studio in Decatur work with a wide range of clients, from collision repair to custom paint jobs for classic cars and motorcycles. Located on Monroe Street on the west side of Decatur, Bowers is your place for body work, too. Whether it's getting your ride back on the road or finally getting that classic car, the paint job you've always wanted. Stop by or give Nate a call to put the best in the business to work for you.
Does your smile need work? Maybe it's time for a cleaning and exam. Visit Laura Kugelhahn, DDS, and her knowledgeable, caring staff at Complete Smiles on North Main Street in Bluffton. Dr. Kugelhahn would love to help you maintain your dental health or transform your smile. Whatever your needs might be, Complete Smiles is there to help you. Dr. Kugelhahn is currently accepting new patients. Call 824-3100 to schedule an appointment.
Welcome back to the Double Eagle Clubhouse Grill. You've joined the Hager Hershey Zelt High School Wrestling Weekly. And Dane, I was talking to my T-shirt designer today, and I approved her final version. I told her to change something. She goes, no, I'm not changing it. And it's like, okay, I guess that's what it's going to look like. So we've got the design finalized. I'm supposed to have that tomorrow. I'll send it off to our T-shirt people, and we'll get that catalog up there. So those wildly popular shirts that if you want to give them out to your friends and loved ones for Christmas gifts, they'll be available. And we kind of went a different direction this year, color-wise, color scheme, different design, and everybody will be happy about it.
Well, today we are, of course, giving everybody a little bit of a taste of what we're going to experience on Thursday, and that is really celebrating the rich history of high school wrestling in Adams County and at Bellmont specifically. And we even had to talk a little bit of, I hate to bring it up, but we had to talk a little bit about Decatur high school wrestling history because of New Haven's win on Saturday. I don't know if you guys realize, but New Haven had never beaten Bellmont in a dual meet.
63 years?
Really? Ever. Wow. We had to go all the way back to 1963, and I know I have to give Coach Lynn a hard time because I'm sure he was excited about the victory, right? And I said, man, it's the first time you guys have beaten us since 1963. And then I saw his athletic director tweet that it's the first time New Haven has beaten Bellmont since 1963. And I said, well, that's not true because they've never beaten Bellmont. It was Decatur that they beat. So it was they beat Coach Geisler's team the first 4 years, and New Haven had a long established program in the very beginning of the Decatur years. And then since then, Bellmont had won 59 years in a row, but
he can consider himself fact-checked.
Yeah, I guess so. So we're going to talk a little bit about 1978 and 1979.
You know, I was talking to Gino and Froggy that already left. People that are young, way younger than us, your dad and Dewey out there, they know 1978 was a wild year for wrestling season. They had this little thing called the Blizzard of 78, where the snow from the library blew on top of that hallway where C-Wing's at, and the roof collapsed. And we were out of school 2 weeks. And you know what it's like to keep the weight down when you're out of school for 2 weeks? You can't get into the gym. I mean, they finally let us in that last week, but we got back in time just to get in shape to wrestle at the conference tournament. So the middle of the season was trashed, and nobody could do anything, but the environment was just wild because the whole season was just broken up.
So an odd caveat to that before we let Gene talk about what he remembers of the Blizzard of 78 is that you guys aren't in the high school very often anymore. I know Gene's there a lot on the outside with softball and stuff, but they did a remodel of the hallway that you're talking about. And every once in a while, a kid will ask me, why are there 2 poles in the middle of the hallway? And that's because the roof collapsed. Those 2 poles are still there, and they haven't fixed. They didn't bother to take out the poles. They're still there because of that's exactly where the roof collapsed. And somebody's, oh, that's not true. I'm like, go look at the yearbook and see where it collapsed. It was right there. I guarantee you there's a reason that there's 2 poles in the middle of the hallway. It's because that's how they shored up everything, and they never went back and fixed it because it was doing its job.
Similar to the line in Apocalypse Now, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. We love the smell of diesel fuel in the morning because they're driving a Bobcat around inside the hallways, hauling snow and debris out. So we come back in, and the whole school smelled like diesel fuel for a month.
So Gene Grote is joining us. What do you remember about? So you guys were out of school for 2 weeks, correct?
At least.
So how many days off did you go without practicing?
What do you think?
The first week, I know for sure.
At least the first week.
They had that rule back then. If you didn't go to school, you couldn't get in the gym. And they said, extenuating circumstances, give us a break here.
And you guys, of course, were still wrestling. This is prior to, for a lot of people listening, this is prior to the auxiliary gym, prior to the current Bellmont wrestling room. We're talking about
the old weight room.
The old weight room now, which is just storage above the gym lobby in the main gym. So where did you guys practice then?
There.
In the room.
When you had the blizzard. You just didn't have practice at all?
We didn't have practice.
You couldn't get in. So
you couldn't go anywhere.
You didn't?
The snow drifts were like 15 feet high.
Unless you knew somebody with a 4-wheel drive, and I did. Mongo, Chris Malin's brother, had a big Ford F-150 with a plow on the front of it, and I walked from my house on Studebaker Street over to Homestead and got in his brother's truck, and we went and plowed and took groceries to people for a solid week because you couldn't go anywhere. And the Smiths out here, I went out to her house and borrowed her snowmobile, and we were running supplies on snowmobiles.
And what was the timeline exactly? Was this after January 1st?
It was
that
February.
was 40-some years ago.
It was It was like the 1st of February, I think. 1st or 2nd of February.
Okay, so it was before sectional?
Yeah, it was like right before conference.
Okay. And of course, back then you guys would have been in the NEIAC?
NEIAC. And I told these guys that we were trying to convince AJ to call up there and say, just send us our medals because we're going
to win it anyways.
We're going to win the weight classes. And they said, no, we're not going to do it anyways. And we won. There was only 13 weight classes at the time. We won 12 of the 13 weight classes.
So you come back from the blizzard then, and you wrestle in the Adams Central sectional, correct? This is 1978 we're talking about, right?
Yep.
In 1978, you guys win the Adams Central sectional, and you go to regional at?
Snyder.
At Snyder.
Yep.
And you guys won that.
Yep.
And then where was semi-state that year?
Northside High School in the bowl. Northside.
Yeah.
Because I have a picture of Froggy and Mongo and Ocampo and I sitting on the wall because they had the place standards up the wall, and we were sitting on that padded wall, and we had four semi-state champions, and of the 4 wrestlers, we had 2 losses between all 4 of us.
So I'm looking at the state program now from 1978. The state finals back then are a little bit later than they are now, February 25th. So that does match up with what you're talking about.
February 5th of 1978 is when the blizzard hit.
Okay. So February 25th, 1978, and I'm looking at these brackets. It's so cool. I don't know if anybody that's listening has gone back through. The IHSAA has cataloged and gone through everything from there. So we're looking at 98 pounds. Who was your 98 pounder that year?
Ocampo.
Ooh, now we're really going to.
Ocampo. It was Ocampo at 98, Frog at 12, I was at 19, Mongo at 85.
So Franzi was at 105 pounds.
Oh, he was so 5, Ocampo was at 12.
Yes, that's right. And what place did Jeff get that year?
He got beat in the semis, didn't make the finals.
So back then they were only placing 4 guys, is that correct?
Yeah.
So you got 8 guys in a bracket. They're coming from 4 different semi-states.
Ocampo got beat by Johnny Swaim in the consos and took 4th.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking here. Marcus Ocampo was 3rd at 112 pounds. And, of course, this was at Southport. Right? And this, if you look at this picture here from last year, it says last year's finals match. I've seen a lot of the negatives from Jim Hopkins and from your dad, Rex, who took a bunch of pictures from 78. What an atmosphere. I mean, there's just people with leaning over railings and all the way up, as much as, and it's such a great facility, and Market Square was a great facility, and it was a lot of fun. Being packed in like that is sometimes better than being in those gigantic cavernous.
Southport was not that big. I think Southport, I mean, their max capacity is like 4,500 maybe.
So looking at the pictures, in they've got 3 different mats, right? Not 4.
Yep.
And they've got half the bleachers pulled out and the other half pushed in.
Well, the brackets were only 3. There were only 3 levels. There was only 8 people there, so you wrestled 3 rounds. So you didn't have that Friday night round of.
So everything was on a Saturday. There was no Friday night.
One day.
They didn't add that. I don't think until they went to Market Square. Does that sound right?
I guess correct.
Because they were able to get it for a whole weekend, and if you were going to pay for Market Square, I think the idea was, well, you might as well use it for the whole weekend type thing.
And
so
Market Square is the first year. That was BJ's year that he won it. So that was at 82.
Yeah, I think 82 sounds right. So looking forward.
81?
He graduated in 82, I think. Now we have to look it up. There's
I think he won his junior year.
He was a freshman when we were seniors.
Right.
People said, "Did you wrestle BJ in your school?" I was like, "He was so tiny, they wouldn't let us wrestle him." I beat up on Gurky though. Gurk's out here. Gurk was our 5-pounder. At 19, I could get down to the 5-pounders and I didn't get yelled at. I said, "Get back with the big guys." They'd let me whoop on 5-pounders for a little bit, but
Rex, when you practiced, you weighed 200 pounds.
Yeah, I had
you wore 7 layers of clothes.
I did.
And trash bags and all kinds of stuff.
And I was just thinking about today that during that time frame, I was trying to cut a bunch of weight, and I got really hot, and the vent in that room opened up, and I took a broom handle, and I was trying to close the vent, and I got lightheaded, and I passed out right in the wrestling room. And
yeah,
Eugene gets all freaked out, and he grabs one of those ice packs to cool me down, and he hits it like this and blows it up and blows that blue chemical and all those little beads all over the place. And I wake up, and I'm covered in that blue chemical and these little beads, and I was like, what happened? They're mopping it. That's kind of stuff happened back then.
You are correct. It was Brent Ferrot in 81. So 81 would have been the first year at Market Square. He graduated in 82, but he won his junior year. Yep. So, it was a big difference going from Southport to Market Square, I'm sure. But you look at where the state tournament has gone and what it's turned into. I don't know if you could imagine what that tournament would look like in a high school gymnasium anymore. And I think what we probably all gained from last year's season was an appreciation for being in downtown Indianapolis after not necessarily Evansville did a poor job, but it just didn't feel the same. It didn't have the same atmosphere.
Is it going back to Indiana?
Yes, it'll be in Indianapolis.
Now, one other thing, in 1978, if you're one of those people that looks in the archives and you go to the IHSW website, 1978 is the oldest video recording of a state finals you can get. They have it. And they skip 80.
They skip 79, too.
They skip 79. They skip 79. They have 78. They skip 79, and they start back to 80 and have every year after 80. So I'd always wanted to see how bad I looked in the state finals. So I went online. I ordered it, paid $55 for it, and it shows up. And I come home from work, and I'm ready to get in there and see the thing. And my daughter had stayed home sick from school that day, and she goes, "You looking for this?" I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "You're not on it." I was like, "What do you mean I'm not on it?" And she goes, "You're not on it." And I put it in a DVD player and I start playing it. They were covering this Indianapolis channel that was covering it. We're covering the state swim finals at the same time. They covered a couple of wrestling matches and they come back and they say, "Due to a time constraint, Keith Saunders from Bloomington South defeated Rex Brewer from Bellmont 7-0. Now let's move on to the 126-pound match." And I was like, I paid $55 and I got nothing. So our good buddy Jason Wiley, who I didn't know at the time, I sent back and said, "I'm not on it." He sent my money back to me, but I still have it. And I burned a copy and gave it to Mongo because he got beat in the final. So that's just what he wanted to see too.
That was a great impression of Greg Rakestraw, the 1978 Greg Rakestraw there.
Yeah.
Flashing forward to the end of these brackets and the end of the program, a great picture of Bill Schultz, who was the 77 state champion, and that tradition of putting last year's champion on the page of this year's program has continued with the IHSAA, and it is a really cool tribute and a really good way to recognize those guys who win our single class tournament.
So you know what that means for the 1978 Bellmont wrestler that makes it to the finals and doesn't win? Makes me first loser.
You're the first loser.
First Bellmont wrestler to make it to the finals and not win. But I didn't feel that bad because 2 hours later Mongo got beat too. So that's 2 of us got beat.
Wasn't that your age-old argument that on the wall you changed things?
I told BJ, I said, that's wrong. That's wrong. And he goes, well, Malin took second that year too. And I said, what weight class in the state finals wrestles first, 119 or 185? And he looked and he goes, 119? Well, then we repainted a wall. He fixed it, so it's correct now.
So I'm looking at the first round matchup at the 1978 state finals. Chris Malin wrestled Kevin King from Bloomington South. Do you remember that match?
Yeah, I do. Because they wrestled at the Bloomington 8-Way earlier, and it was a war.
Now, we've talked about the Bloomington 8-Way as a great tournament in sort of putting Bellmont on the map on a statewide scale. We've had some great stories from Coach Calver, from Coach Webb, about how they got into that tournament and how that really transitioned then once they got into that Bloomington 8-Way and they decided that they wanted to be traveling and going to these tournaments, that's really kind of what the inspiration was for Hayes to get Bellmont into the Al Smith. This is the success that they had seen.
He was a Mishawaka guy, that's why.
Right, and going out and finding those other tournaments, because I think if you look at the schedules from the early 70s, there wasn't a whole lot of travel. And I mean, it's not that they weren't willing to travel. I think there was a long time there where Angola was in our conference, right? And we'd go up to Angola in the early 60s on a Tuesday night and wrestle a dual meet.
Right.
So it wasn't like they weren't willing to travel. It's just that I don't think that those early teams really understood the importance of getting out and seeing other programs from across the state. And Coach Myers talks about it a lot. That's team building. You go on these weekend trips and you go on these long trips. It's different than just going on a Tuesday night. You get that experience of going with your teammates and going a long ways.
You have to check me, but the old NEIA 8 was Angola, Garrett, South Adams, Bellmont, DeKalb.
Yeah, we're going to have to...
We didn't have Leo then.
Leo's not there. Columbus City was in there, and Homestead.
That sounds about right. I think so.
Yeah, but it was all different because the NEIA then went to the NEIAC. No, the NEIAC is what it was.
Yes, that's what you're talking about.
And then it went to something else, and then it went to the NEA.
And that was short-lived before they went to the...
It was like 2 seasons maybe.
And before they went to the NHC in 89.
NHC, yeah.
I think was what it was, and that is kind of what separated everybody into what they currently are today.
Just so I noticed, you didn't sneak in on me. I see you back there in the green shirt.
He's acting like you can come sit over here with us.
Rico Suave, he slides in. It's the first time he hasn't been on vacation in a month, so he can beat our show.
I'm trying to think of what else we want to look at here on these 1978 brackets. Any other comments or questions? Or
Eugene, you were a country boy. You lived out in the country. You guys were like snowed in. I mean, you guys couldn't go anywhere.
They had payloaders, and like I said, the snow drifts, they were piling it up. It was about 15 feet high. It took a week to get out of the driveway.
It was weird because you'd walk out and there'd be grass, and you could walk in your whole yard to be grass, and next to it would be a 30-foot snowdrift.
It was weird.
It was just, and cars were buried. You couldn't tell where your cars were at, but I mean, it was something. I know that my wife was my girlfriend at the time, and they lived on High Street, and that was the south entrance to the hospital, and they had payloaders, and I had to open that up, and I know that we dropped a tape measure down there, and I think it was 18 feet high was that. Right out in front of the Knights Columbus Hall.
So let's talk a little bit about what Tim has planned for Thursday and how that kind of connects you guys and connects everybody. I know when you first approached me about it, and you said, "Well, Tim's gonna recognize all us losers, state runners up." Was there a time where you thought to yourself, "Well, this is going to be my legacy," or that I didn't reach that point, or is there a point in your life where you realize that maybe a loss in the state finals did more for you than a lot of other things in your life, and that you've come to appreciate it?
Well, I felt cheated because I lost my junior year, and I was ranked number 1 in coming back my senior year, and I thought I should have won, and I got beat in a match I shouldn't have got beat by at semi-state. So I felt cheated because I never got that second opportunity. Now, Tim Myers wins state 2 times and gets beat the third time he's in the finals. So your last match as a Bellmont wrestler, you're in the state finals and you get beat?
Yeah,
that's tough too.
There's certainly a difference, I think, in maybe the way people feel about Thursday for the guys who also were recognized last year as state champions, right? But I do think that there are some guys, and this generation of kids, and I guess maybe that's who we're really trying to reach, because ultimately that's the goal, right, is to continue to build the program, is there are a lot of guys out there who people don't realize, oh, he was a wrestler. He was a guy who accomplished something, and yes, his picture's up on the wall up there in the wrestling room, but I didn't really realize that guy was that good of a wrestler, and I think that's what is going to be really cool about Thursday.
Oh, I hope so. It's after I got beat, it's like, it's emotional. You go out into the hallway, I cried my eyes out. It's like, but then it's like, you come back, you give it a week, and you say, I did pretty good. To be number 2 in the state, it was an honor. It was an honor to represent Bellmont at that time.
And you look at what Coach Farreau has done with you're talking about the old wrestling room and now the new wrestling room, and then after the remodel and the new paint job and everything that they've done up there, to go back through, and it was really cool. I wish I would have taken more pictures of it. Coach BJ Farreau hand-painted for the second time in his life every single name on that wall and put all of the records on there. He added his own touch as he decided to put the career record only next to the final time that they wrestled rather than next to all of them. But, it's a really cool connection with the past and the present. And you and I go into a lot of different wrestling rooms, and a lot of schools don't do that. They don't have any connection.
There's nothing like Bellmont.
We talked about the head coach with Wayne, right? And he's trying to connect these kids today with the guys who wrestled back in the 70s, and it's difficult. But that combination of pictures on the wall for guys who are conference champions or regional champions or whatever, and then the guys to get your name on the wall, those are all milestones that those kids strive for.
Well, we got to wrap this section. We're going to go to a break, but we'll come back and talk more about this. But one thing, it was interesting when Tim came up with this idea, and he put out a text to everybody that was going to be there tonight on Thursday night, and there was a lot of interesting conversations. And John Kintz, who is never lacking of words, he came on there and said, yeah, but you're including a bunch of losers with you guys. Tim Myers is a state champ. Paul Baker's a state champ. Chris Malin's a state champ. Matt Irwin's a state champ. Those guys were all runners-up, too, but they're going to be standing shoulder to shoulder with us that day because there was one night that they didn't win. And it's like, John Kint's like, you guys are putting us the same breath with those guys. But, it was jokingly half-hearted. But Tim's really behind it, and the fact that he is passionate about it enough to think about us, and it's a long time coming. So with that, let's send it back to studio for a round of commercials. Back with next period right after this on WZBD.
The staff at Haggard, Hershey, and Zelt Funeral Home is honored to serve the community we love and live in. Locally owned and operated by Ryan Hershey and Eric Zelt, we understand that each family we serve and each life lived tells a unique story. Our goal is to offer comfort, care, and dignity to all who entrust their loved ones to our care. We are proud to call Adams County our home and look forward to serving you for generations to come.
Based out of the Indiana Tech Wrestling Facility, the Warrior Regional Training Center is an elite training center for youth wrestlers, high school wrestlers, and college and senior level athletes. Featuring a college coaching staff with a strong history of developing talent and producing results, Warrior RTC will give any wrestler quality training partners to push them to new levels in the state-of-the-art 25,000 square foot wrestling building. The training is affordable and private training is also available. Put Warrior RTC in your corner this season. You don't always need an attorney, but when you do, the man to call is Brad Weber. Brad has extensive experience in most legal matters and will help you make your problems disappear. Keep this number handy, 452-7045. That's 452-7045. You just never know when you'll need the services of an experienced litigator like Brad Weber.
I'm not here hosting a show, I'm out here eating anyways.
Yeah, the food is always good, and we also want to give a shout-out to a great supporter of this show, and that is Brad Weber. Not just a supporter of high school wrestling here in Adams County, but a big supporter of high school football. Also gives his time when it comes to officiating for football, and just a general all-around nice guy, and we really appreciate his support of this show, and it's for moments like this, as so much of what is the aura around high school wrestling in Adams County has to do with you guys from the 1970s and telling the stories. Man, every time that I have a conversation with Bob Strickler, it's like I try to write down everything that he says. He made a comment to me. I talked to him at the Madison Street Plaza, and he was talking about the first time that Gary Geisler had all of the parents, because he had a son who was on the very first team, and talking about how Geisler would call them in and explain to them what this sport actually was. And his comment was, and he says this all the time, Bob Strickler does, that he can't believe that we've reached this point. Like that everything, every one in Decatur and everybody in Adams County just has this understanding of the sport that you would have never thought would have been possible 60 years ago when the program started.
Now, the night after the viewing for Mr. Wolpert, there was a bunch of those guys from that class out here. They were 89s. I think there was 89.
Rubel.
They were 89s. So that was 10 years after us.
99.
99.
There you go.
So they were 20 years after us. And a lot of those young guys are saying, hey, tell me, is this story true? We heard this story. And the athletic director for Yorktown, Mr. Brown, Steve Brown, he was here, asked me all kind of questions, and he said, people said, did you guys do this? I said, yeah, we did that. I mean, just little stuff that kind of stories and legacy had went down for 20 years, and those guys were talking about would it happen or not.
Now, Gene has a long history with the softball program, but I'm sure that he can attest that one of the coolest parts about the wrestling program is that connection between generations, the stories, the sort of legendary figures. And it's kind of funny the way some of them happen. Two guys from your era, from your decade, that had a huge influence on the guys from the last 10 to 15 years are Marcus Ocampo and Bruce Teamy. Why? Because those two guys put in their time with the middle school teams for so long, helping John Freet, Sean Farrow, and a lot of these guys that the Ike Rubels and the Duke Myers, Caleb Hankinson, all of those guys, they had that guy from your era who was there in the wrestling room, and then you fast forward now, and these guys who are wrestling for right now, they've got Joe Rubel in there who was part of those 80s teams, and of course we lost Paul Gunsett, but he had a big impact on a lot of these guys, and that's still shown today. So it's just cool that we've still got generations of guys. And I give Sean and Tim a lot of crap all the time, and I remind them how old they are compared to a lot of the coaches of teams around the state. Like, they connect that 90s era of Bellmont wrestling to the current time. And they're no spring chickens themselves, being graduates of 95 and 96 being there. But that's what you need. You need guys to come back and say, this is Bellmont wrestling and this is how you should treat it, and you need to take pride in it.
Don't forget that when AJ wanted to build that lures team, he took Ocampo with him. Ocampo went up there and was part of that team that helped build that lures team up. I mean, he was in the room and he was a driving force. He was a great partner of that, and it's like, he helped build that program away from Bellmont too.
What kind of wrestler was Marcus? Talk about him.
Marcus, he wasn't as bad as Dave. Peachy. But Marcus would jump on top of you and he'd hit you with his crossface. Oh, he just pounds you with that crossface.
Yeah, that was my three-man group: Greg Mankey, Marcos Ocampo, myself, and those guys beat on me. And they used to have turns my freshman year, so you could make me cry first, and that was by the first 10 minutes, they get me to cry a little bit, and then they back off a little bit. But Gino, I'll tell you right this. We wrestled those guys above us our freshman year. We were so hungry to wrestle somebody that wasn't in our room. When we wrestled, we were both undefeated our JV year in freshman because we just beat the dog snot out of kids that we wrestled because we got whooped on in a room so bad we couldn't wait to get out of the Bellmont room just so we could hammer on some people, and we were ruthless.
Yeah, I had to go against Dave Gilbert.
Gilbert.
who was a 4-time sectional champ,
Yeah.
if I remember right. One of the very few in Bellmont school history.
That's how I got my spot. He was trying to make 19 his senior year, and he was trying to make 12 his senior year, and he couldn't make 12 senior year, and he bumped up. And my first match was against the big Adams Central Bellmont rivalry, and I wrestled former sectional champ and Jim Fichter to a 1-1 tie in front of 3,000 people.
The tie.
The tie.
My
first varsity match, 1-1.
Every
tie.
once in a while, the kids will they'll get out one of the media guides from the last couple of years, and that'll be the first thing that they see when they leaf through and they see the leaderboard. There were ties. Yeah, there were ties. This is back in the day when the rules were a little bit different. I don't know. Do you think we'd be better off with ties, or do you like the current overtime rules?
I like the overtime rule. I think there should be a winner. And the ties like kissing your sister. Nobody gets real thrills. But I mean, Eugene, we'll tell you, the kids that start out as freshmen and wrestle as freshmen because number one, there's maybe not a full lineup and they don't have anybody to force them. That didn't happen back in our day.
No.
The Bruce Teamies of the world. Bruce Teamie was behind Pichi Ocampo and Victor Beer, and he couldn't get in the lineup. In his senior year, he takes fourth in state. Why? He'd been behind those other guys that were studs, and that's what it was. You look at our numbers. Some of us guys didn't have as many numbers because we didn't wrestle varsity as freshmen because you couldn't get in the lineup.
And Gene, being a longtime JV coach with softball, understands this. It's a different generation now. The kids, they want playing time, and if they don't see that path to playing time, they've got alternatives that they want to do, whether it's work or boyfriends or girlfriends or a different sport or whatever. In that era of having this deep B team and deep C team at a school Belmont size, it's been a struggle to get guys. And that's where I think, too, for those of you who are following the current Belmont program, make sure that you reach out to those guys who are freshmen, those guys who are not varsity, the guys that don't get talked about on this show and on our broadcasts, and talk to them about the JV matches that they have, because those boys do go out and they do wrestle those JV tournaments, but nobody's there to watch them. Nobody's there to encourage them. So there's some really strong freshmen in this freshman class. There's a bunch of guys who came up from the 8th grade class last year. So if you are at a dual meet, or if you know any of those kids, make sure you reach out to them, because those are the kids who eventually make the biggest impact on the team in the years to come.
Well, the other thing is now they specialize. It's one sport. It seems like they concentrate on one sport. When I was in, it's like you'd go from wrestling to baseball to football. You'd have your summer off, but you'd play summer baseball, or you'd wrestle in the summer. We had Decatur Wrestling Club,
Yeah.
and you'd wrestle a couple tournaments. It wasn't like you did 3 months of wrestling in the summer or anything like that. You kind of split things up, and for me, I didn't get burnt out on one sport. I enjoyed the football and the baseball and stuff.
Do you know what was your favorite sport? Was wrestling your favorite sport? You were awful good at baseball and football.
I excelled at wrestling.
Yeah.
I think wrestling was my favorite sport, but football was my least because I was small.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough. Yeah, you went out.
Played nose tackle my senior year at 145. So, but that
was Malin and I at linebacker.
See, the thing was that if wrestling was the sport that I was dedicated to, and that's one I loved, playing football was fun, because to me there was no pressure on it. There's 10 other guys on the field. Somebody's going to pick you up. Wrestling, you're out there underneath the spotlight. It's you and nobody else. Football was fun because you could just let it free, and it wasn't as hard. I thought football was fun. It was one of the funnest sports I ever played, because I didn't have to be that serious about it.
But listening to you guys talk about that, I think that's one of the big challenges with current coaches and current coaching staffs, and especially for our Adams County schools, is convincing a kid that success can be going 15-15 and winning a big match at the ACAC duels, finishing third at the ACAC, and taking fourth at sectional to win your team a sectional title. I think too often kids think that success means semi-state qualifier, state qualifier, and nothing else. And if they're not going to reach that level, they might as well quit. We're trying to convince people that filling that lineup, not giving up the forfeit, not giving up the fall. Bellmont, lost 8 matches to New Haven. They gave up 47 points. That's 7 falls and a tech fall. There's guys out there who could be taking those spots. For South Adams, they got forfeits at 215 and 285 that they're giving up every time. South Adams is a great team. They could be one of the top 4 teams in 1A easily.
There's football players in that Bellmont hallway that could wrestle and make a big difference. Look at the year that we went and got Hakes, and Hakes was a hockey player, and they convinced him to wrestle, and he was just a phenomenal athlete, and he came out, and he won that, helped us win that team regional, gets done beating Yorktown, he gets in the car and drives up and plays hockey in Fort Wayne. So hockey was his favorite sport, but he knew that he could really help that Bellmont team, and they showed him just enough moves to beat just enough guys to win that tournament.
Yeah. So I think that is one of the real challenges in comparing your guys' era to the current era, and I think one of the nice things that Coach Myers is doing is trying to give every effort that he has, and I know he even made the comment to me a couple weeks ago. He's like, we got all these things going on. I've got this organized. I've got this thing happening. I got to win a match too. Like, I have to be the coach of this team as well, but I really do think that there's a lot of effort made on his part and on Sean Farrode's part to make home matches special.
Yeah.
And more than anything, and I've talked about this a lot on the show the last couple of years, like, all of this is being done for that 3rd grader, that 4th grader, that 5th grader, those boys that you see running around the outside of the upper deck up against the railing. Those are the kinds of kids that we're trying to convince, like, this is the sport that we want you to try, because look at where it can take you. Look at the memories that you can have.
He and I had some conversations, and I think he reached out to me first because we'd had some conversations about it. And he always told me, he said, you should be proud of what you did. And I said, I never said I wasn't proud of what I did. I'm telling you that the community around Bellmont never respected or appreciated the guys who didn't win. And Eugene and I have had this conversation. The champions have been put up on his pedestal, and they're out in the lobby and stuff like that. But until Tim puts our faces on the wall in that back corner back there, there's nothing said about the guys that didn't win. It's all about the champions. And it's like he's thinking that I didn't feel that I was worthy, but like, no, I felt I did a lot, but the appreciation was never carried down through the rest of the program, and he recognizes that and says, I think everybody should be recognized. Okay, well, you're the first guy in a long, long time.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to be really cool about Thursday. I really encourage everybody to come out, and if you're unable to, make sure that you listen to the broadcast. We're going to try to make sure that we get as much of the audio that we can capture as possible, and of course some great pictures that we'll have on the website.
And Lawson the other night when he was on with me when we were doing the Delta match, I said to my referee, and he goes, you refereed, Rex? Just because I haven't refereed in 22 years, that means that a kid that hasn't graduated in the past 22 years didn't know I refereed? Oh, well.
He never
we
knew.
all get older.
He never looked through the pages. So, well, hey, Rex, let's set it back for one more round of messages, and let's bring it back for overtime.
DDD Maintenance and Repair, owned and operated by Shane Reynolds, has your local professionals for heavy-duty truck and diesel engine repair. DDD Maintenance and Repair also offers full-service sand and glass blasting for your surface restoration projects. Whether it's getting your heavy-duty truck and diesel engine running like new or sandblasting your project to look like new, we have a blast renewing the past. Give Shane and the guys a call at 260-223-5442. That's DDD Maintenance and Repair.
Renowned around the Midwest for his skills and his creative abilities, Nate Bowers and the team at Bowers Paint Studio in Decatur work with a wide range of clients, from collision repair to custom paint jobs for classic cars and motorcycles. Located on Monroe Street on the west side of Decatur, Bowers is your place for body work too, whether it's getting your ride back on the road or finally getting that classic car, the paint job you've always wanted. Stop by or give Nate a call to put the best in the business to work for you.
When faced with the difficult task of making arrangements for your loved one, many emotions and questions arise. What would they want me to do if they were here? Where is the money coming from? How much should I spend? Do they want burial or cremation? The staff at Haggard, Hershey, and Zelt Funeral Home can help you navigate these tough questions. Make your wishes known and allow us to make sure that your wishes are carried out. Call Ryan Hershey or Eric Zelt at 260-724-7167 to schedule an appointment today.
Welcome back once again to the Double Eagle Clubhouse Grill for the Haggard Hershey Zelt High School Wrestling Weekly. And Dane, we really like to thank our sponsors to help us bring this show to you. And it kind of comes to light when you're making the show shirt, and I got all the artwork to my artwork designer and put it on her, and she's got a real nice layout with all the sponsors on the back. And we've got some great sponsors and got some new sponsors that are on the shirt this year that were not on the shirt last year. One of them sitting back there in the back corner, the lovely Doc that is married to the judge back there. She got her name on a shirt this year, and a couple other guys, D&D Maintenance, and one of our good guests that likes to come down, and Wade McClure, the Warrior RTC, is on the back of there, and the Triple D Maintenance guys, they're on there, and just some great sponsors that allow you and I to come on here and just BS about wrestling on Sundays and Mondays.
Yeah, well, I know that people are listening because last night my phone and my email were lighting up, people asking, why can't I hear the show? What's wrong with the show? Where is the show? Why is it not on? It's on Monday, people.
I told you to put out a thing on Facebook.
I did.
They didn't follow it? Okay.
They didn't follow it. Say, hey, I do not want to fail to mention the young man from Heritage, Mr. Litchfield, who had an excellent weekend, and I can't find the weigh-in sheets. There we go. For Heritage. Here it is. Jax. He's wrestling 175 for Heritage. He beat West Somerset. He beat, I'm trying to remember what the other match that he had, if he beat Byerly or was it Heiser. But he went undefeated for Heritage at the ACAC duels. They've got a couple of guys who are really, really solid. I liked what I saw from Cade Foster at 120. Max Morales, we've seen him on the baseball field, and his older brother as well at 138. Ferguson looked pretty good at 150. Now, Heritage still, I think they just filled 8 weight classes. They had 6 forfeits, but I do think that overall they're probably going to score higher at the ACAC tournament, at their sectional, probably going to have representation at the semi-state. It's going to be one of the best years that they've had in a long time. And what we've learned from having this show for the last 5 or 6 years is that kind of success at a school without a whole lot of wrestling history could really pay dividends next year and the year after and the year after that when it comes to getting guys out for the team and building a program.
You know, success breeds success, but failure doesn't always breed success. And it's some of those guys that you have to live through some losses before you get better. I don't care who you are. The greatest wrestler in the world got beat by somebody before he got great. And it's like you have to be able to live through the pain and the agony and through some losses to get that first victory. And sometimes that first victory is what sets you over the top. It's like, oh, this is what winning's like. I want some more of this.
And we also want to give a shout-out to, I guess, what really becomes our very first Heritage Wrestling sponsor ever on WZBD, and that's Jim Huffman at Classic Dye Services. He reached out to me, says, hey, I really want to support Heritage Wrestling this winter. How can I help? I said, well, with Heritage going to a different sectional and a different regional than what our local teams do, I'm not sure what we'll be able to do. He said, well, whatever you can do to get them. So on Saturday, we went through their results. We're going to try to bring you more updates on what the Heritage guys are doing, especially some of their top guys like Morales and Litchfield. And then when we get to the ACAC tournament in January, we'll make sure that we cover their matches. And then when they get to semi-state, we'll have them included in our coverage.
You need to cut a new commercial for Jimmy because he talks about
this. I did see that.
He talks about the sectional, and for this sectional, and I think that was boys volleyball sectional.
Yeah, I think it was. He's done a great job and is very supportive. And what we found with the Heritage sponsors is that they really want the Heritage teams to get highlighted and to get their due. And we're certainly excited to do that for them. And we've already, you and I both have developed some great relationships with some coaches. And if you're a Heritage fan or if you're interested in some of their athletic teams, the boys basketball team this year is going to be great. And we're going to be bringing you some boys volleyball in the spring. And of course, the Heritage baseball and Heritage softball teams have been a ton of fun to watch the last couple of years with a lot of talent. And we've even gotten excited about our relationship with the Heritage Track and Field the last couple of springs.
I think we throw more weight towards that boys volleyball season this year because the rumors are that Craig Kroll is getting a team together.
20-some boys.
Yeah, and I tell you what, boys volleyball is exciting to watch. I love broadcasting volleyball, and boys volleyball is just a next level up from girls, just not because of boys over girls. It's the speed and it's the athleticism. You know, an 8-foot net to those guys means nothing. Those guys are up way over. You know, Litchfield at 6'6" is just towering over it. Woodland's got a guy that's 6'7" that plays, and it just, I mean, that's very exciting volleyball, and it doesn't get rained out. Girls softball,
right.
Boys baseball, we had like 5 rain-out games this year, and if we just lean towards some volleyball early before the baseball and softball season gets rolling, I think we can put some really good sports on the air with that.
Well, let's remind all of our listeners of what is coming up this week. When it comes to wrestling, we'll have New Haven and Adams Central on Tuesday. You and I will be there tomorrow night in the hangar. And then on Thursday, we'll have dual broadcasts with Joe on YouTube up at Columbia City for the Adams Central match, while we'll be at Bellmont for the South Adams match. Then listen on Saturday throughout the day for a couple of different matches, either for South Adams or Adams Central at their tournament. And then on Monday, we'll bring you the placement round matches, the 3rd place, 5th place, and 7th place matches for the ECIC from Jay County. South Adams will be there, of course. And then we'll also carry the finals for you. We had some great matches last year. Colt Bollenbacher had a great match in the finals, really set him up for his state run. You know, guys like Isaiah Meyer, you know, who else I don't know from South Adams that'll make it, but that should be some great wrestling to get you ready for Christmas. And then when we come back, we will also have, of course, don't forget High School Wrestling Weekly on Sunday for the reveal for the last teams in. But we'll also have our show live from the Crow's Nest at Mishawaka. And then we'll have coverage of day 2. And then when we come back, you know, January 1st is the holiday for everybody. There's no athletic events via the IHSAA on that day anyways. But we come right back January 2nd, Bellmont and Adams Central. It's going to be one of the biggest dual meets in the last couple of years, I think, for us in the regular season. It's going to be a great match. Then on Friday, we've got the girls wrestling sectional. And then we come back, and we've got Adams Central and Homestead after we reveal the brackets. Huntington North and South Adams, the girls semi-state, 2 team states. It just goes day after day. We keep bringing you great coverage. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
You know, I can't get to a computer that I can get the Google Sheets where you got it out there to get it printed. So I went and copy and pasted, put one into something that I could get print off and hung it on my wall. And I looked and it's like, those dates are really close together, all of them. I mean, we go almost, 4 nights a week, counting the Sunday night.
Absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, of course, we really look forward to those 2 big shows, revealing the last teams in and then revealing the brackets when we come back that first week of January.
Now, the guys at Jay County there tonight told me that girls' team state is back on.
Organized not by the IHSAA.
Correct.
But by the Gary Myers Club.
Yeah.
And the IHSGW. They're doing it, and it's all going to be on one day. And that's going to be the weekend following our state finals coverage. So really looking forward to that on January 17th. Make sure that you follow us throughout the day. What a storyline we have of Mallory Winter going to be a 4-time state champion from right here in our area, and she's a great kid. And it was really cool that you were able to, on your broadcast, sort of make her college announcement to the world. And I know Rio is a pretty nice school. I've driven by it on my way out to the East Coast, and I know Coach Myers and everybody involved with Jay County Wrestling is really excited for her to make that jump.
Well, I know that I was talking to them while they were still playing basketball, and I couldn't get the mat set up, and she told me that she'd made her announcement and said, you know what, come see me afterward, and we'll reveal this. Have your big gender reveal party of where Mallory Winter's going to school. And, she's pretty easy-going. I mean, she's a great interview. I mean, she's not nervous about anything, just lets it roll, and a really good kid, and she seemed passionate about where she's going to go to school. And I told her up front, I said, in taking a couple of my kids to colleges, and the greatest thing I ever heard from any coach says, you have to love this school because you could blow a knee out the first day of practice and never play another
then you're just a
minute,
student.
and you're a student. Do you love this place well enough? And my wonder is like, no, I don't like this place that well, and went to someplace else because that guy had put it in her mind. And I tell that to a lot of kids when they're looking at colleges. Yeah, wrestling's really cool. Duke Myers found out. Duke Myers loves college. If he wasn't wrestling in college, I think he'd still love college.
He would still love Michigan State.
Yeah.
No, I truly believe that, too, talking to him. And he did a nice job this weekend of being brother to Gabe at the NE8 duels. It was cool to see. Although I think one of the coolest moments sitting behind Duke on Saturday was we were watching the East Noble match. Bellmont a little bit disappointed in the way they wrestled New Haven, but I believe it was Xavier got thrown, and I don't know if it was an over-under or what it was, and it was on the edge of the mat, and they went out of bounds. And Duke was kind of sitting back like this, and that kid threw Xavier, and Duke went. And his eyes were fixed on what was going to happen next. And, of course, X just kind of stoned the kid after that.
Just woke him up. But stirred the giant.
I tell you what, Xavier, Grady, Gavin, Henry, Gabe, those guys are all wrestling so well right now. And, Gabe's taken a couple more losses than the rest of that group, but he's so exciting to watch, and he's in every match that he's in. And sometimes, you wrestle guys, and Grady would probably agree to this. Like, he hasn't seen the greatest group of heavyweights so far in his season.
He wrestled Coleman tough.
Yeah, and sometimes, there's not much difference between 15-1 and 12-4 as far as who you've seen, but I really do believe that all of those guys are poised. That group that I just listed right there, and no, I don't mean to discount like a Sam Wolpert, but I just worry that he's not healthy right now.
Yeah.
That group that I mentioned before, all of those guys could place at the Al Smith and could have great tournaments here in the next 2 weeks.
Grady Baker is 1-0 going into the third period with Coleman ranked number 4 in the state, and he was with him, and he was pushing a little bit and got caught in a little throw by and got taken down, made it 4-0, made it look like it was worse than that. But that happened 12, 15 seconds left to go in the match. Grady wrestled him 1-0 for 6 minutes.
And if you think about how good Grady got over the course of last year, from about this time, early December, to sectional, when he beat Peyton Long from Southern Wells to give Bellmont the sectional title, if he can show that much more improvement this year, think about how good he's going to be next year as a senior.
Once again, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors. I'd like to thank everybody that came out for the show. I'd like to thank my good buddy Gino that's here, came out and sat and talked with us. Froggy was just here, and I really look forward to Thursday night when we kind of get some recognition. But with that, there's another episode in the can of the Haggard Hershey Zelt High School Wrestling Weekly live from the Double Eagle Clubhouse Grill.